many?
She would have never. First of all, she would have never woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she would have never.
What you mean? 8 o'clock in the morning.
I'm just saying.
That ain't what I said. I never said.
I know you
guys,
didn't say that.
this isn't the time to fight.
Exactly. I don't give a about you walking, nigga. You lost her though.
How did I fucking lose?
Because you was watching her, Henry. What the do you mean?
In the quiet town of Davenport, Iowa, a seemingly ordinary summer day would soon be shattered by an event that would leave a community forever changed. On July 10th, 2020, 10-year-old Breasia Terrell was reported missing. What started as a typical weekend visit to her father figure's home quickly turned into a desperate search that would last for months. But the question on everyone's mind wasn't just where Breasia had gone, it was what happened to her. As days turned into weeks, the search for Breasia took on a life of its own. Law enforcement, volunteers, and the community scoured every corner of Davenport, hoping for any sign, any trace of the young girl. Her mother, Aisha, was beside herself, heartbroken, struggling to make sense of the empty space Breasia had left behind. However, the person entrusted with her care, the very man Breasia had known and trusted, was at the center of the mystery. Breasia's disappearance would not only shake the town of Davenport, but it would also force everyone to confront the heartbreaking reality that someone they had trusted could be capable of unimaginable acts. This is the tragic story of Breasia Terrell, a story of lies, secrets, and a loss that would echo through the lives of everyone who knew her. But before we begin, if you find this video interesting, please give it a like at the end and tell me what you think about the case. It really helps the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you. This video is created solely for educational and documentary purposes. It does not endorse, glorify, or condone any of the criminal actions or individuals described in this case. Viewer discretion is advised. 10-year-old Breasia Terrell was known for her infectious smile and her vibrant spirit. She was a young girl with a heart full of life, and she loved basketball, a passion she shared with her family and friends. But her talents didn't stop there. She was also a budding artist, always doodling and sketching in her free time. Her creativity was one of the many things that made her special, but it was her caring nature that truly defined her. Breasia had a bond with her mother, Aisha, that was nothing short of extraordinary, and Aisha often described her daughter as her shadow, a girl who was always there, eager to help and ready to brighten the day. They were inseparable, with Breasia always looking out for her younger brother, DL, whom she loved dearly. Breasia's world was a mix of family love, laughter, and the excitement that came with being a child in a small town. But like so many families, hers was not without complications. Her mother, Aisha, had once been in a relationship with Henry Dinkins, whom she had a son with, DL. Henry was someone Aisha had known for years, and despite their relationship ending, he remained part of her life, though in a less consistent and more distant way. Henry Dinkins had been around during Breasia's early years, and in many ways, he became a father figure to her. He was the one who would take her to local basketball games, the one who would try to teach her how to shoot hoops in the driveway. In her younger years, Breasia had fond memories of Henry. He was someone she trusted, but as time passed, Aisha's relationship with Henry fell apart, and he drifted away, making occasional visits to see his son, DL, but largely staying out of their lives. Yet despite their separation, Henry remained a fixture in Breasia's life. So never questioned his presence, always accepting him as part of her family, even though his involvement was inconsistent at best. However, there were things about Henry that were far less ideal. Underneath the facade of the friendly father figure was a man with a dark past. Henry was a registered sex offender, having been convicted of a serious crime when he was just 17, and he had been involved in an incident of third-degree sexual that had led to his conviction. Though years had passed, and Henry had since tried to move on, the stain of his past never fully faded, and his record was a matter of public record, something that followed him wherever he went. On the afternoon of July 9th, 2020, Henry Dinkins arrived at Aisha's house, just as they had planned, to pick up DL for the weekend. DL was excited, and as he often did, he asked if his sister Breasia could come along, and without hesitation, Henry agreed, assuring Aisha that it would be fine for Breasia to join them. However, when Aisha's older son, who was 13, also asked if he could join them, Henry said no. He explained that there wasn't enough space in the car for all three children, a claim that Aisha later found odd given that Henry was driving a car with plenty of seating. Aisha, though initially disappointed, didn't press the issue. She trusted Henry and believed that the trip would be a good opportunity for DL and Breasia to spend time together. But the children's first stop that afternoon wasn't Henry's apartment, but a friend's house. Henry had a friend in town, and the kids spent a few hours there, playing video games and passing the time. While the children played, Henry spent time with his friend, chatting and catching up. The visit seemed harmless enough, like many other visits they had made in the past, and everything appeared normal. However, after some time at the friend's house, Henry and the children headed to his girlfriend, Andrea Culberson's apartment at the Jersey Meadows complex in Davenport. Henry had been living with Andrea for a while, and the children were familiar with the apartment. It was a place they had stayed before, and Aisha felt comfortable with them being there. As the evening wore on, Aisha realized she had forgotten to pack Breasia's pajamas. Wanting to make sure her daughter had everything she needed for the weekend, Aisha decided to drive back to Henry's apartment and drop off the pajamas and some other things she'd be needing for the weekend. It was a quick trip, a simple errand. Aisha, though tired from the day, didn't think much of it. She just wanted to make sure everything was in place for her daughter. When Aisha arrived at Henry's apartment, she called Breasia down to the parking lot to pick up the bag of clothes. As Breasia ran down to meet her, Aisha handed over the clothes with a smile. Aisha kissed Breasia goodbye once more, feeling reassured that her daughter had everything she needed for the weekend. Yet, as she drove away from the complex, a subtle unease crept in. Aisha couldn't quite explain it, but something felt off. But she dismissed it as nothing more than a mother's worry after all. Everything seemed normal. At Andrea's apartment, Breasia and DL were given dinner, and afterward, they both took showers to freshen up. After their showers, the children settled down for bed. Breasia fell asleep first, curling up in the bedroom, while DL followed soon after, lying beside his sister. Henry and Andrea, meanwhile, slept in the living room on an air mattress. There was nothing particularly unusual about the arrangement, just another night in the apartment. Later that night, around 10:30 p.m., Breasia sent Aisha a text message telling her, "Good night," a simple, comforting message that Aisha would cherish in the days to come. But just hours later, in the stillness of the early morning on July 10th, a text from Henry would shatter the quiet, delivering news that would turn everything upside down. He claimed that Breasia was missing. His message was vague and alarming. "I woke up, and she's gone." The words hit Aisha like a punch to the gut, and she immediately tried calling Henry. But his response was slow, and his story didn't add up. First, he said they had all gone to bed, but when they woke up, Breasia was gone. Then he changed his story, saying he had looked around the apartment complex but hadn't found her. Aisha felt a growing sense of dread as Henry's responses grew more inconsistent, and she asked him if he had called the police, but Henry was vague on that too. It didn't make sense. Aisha's mind raced. How could Breasia just disappear in the middle of the night? Aisha tried to reach Henry again and again, but his responses were scattered and unclear, and the more she called, the more the situation didn't add up. Aisha's gut, that nagging feeling she had earlier, grew into a sickening certainty. She then knew something was terribly wrong, and she had to get to the bottom of it. Aisha's heart sank as she tried to piece together the events, and she kept calling, asking for more details. But Henry's story didn't add up. He couldn't explain where Breasia could have gone, what time exactly he had noticed she was missing, or how it even happened. His responses were evasive, and he sounded confused. "We woke up and she was gone," he repeated, but didn't elaborate on anything that made sense. But why couldn't he remember basic details, like where he had last seen Breasia, or how long they had been asleep? His inability to recall simple facts raised further questions. But it wasn't just Henry's responses that made Aisha uneasy, it was his actions. He hadn't gone straight to the police. Instead, he seemed to be aimlessly driving around, not knowing exactly where to look. As Aisha sat in her car, racing toward the police station to file a report, she saw Henry's car zoom past her. He was speeding in the opposite direction, not toward the police station, but to who knows where. She quickly made a U-turn and started tailing him in a desperate attempt to catch up. When she finally caught up to him at McDonald's, she honked her horn and got his attention, only to hear more vague explanations. Aisha followed Henry to Andrea's apartment, where they both met with the police.
So when was the last time you saw her?
She was in the house.
Yeah, when was the last time you saw her?
9:30.
Last night?
9:30.
Okay. Okay.
with him.
Okay. When was the last time you saw her?
She was in the bed when I woke up this morning.
She was in the bed?
Yeah.
When you went to bed last night? Okay.
This is crazy, man. This is like, you know what I'm saying? I know she going fucking hysterical, big brother.
Yeah. DIN.
KINS.
Then the police started taking notes, asking questions, and Henry could barely remember anything about what had happened in the hours leading up to Briasia's disappearance. He was asked where he had looked for her, and he couldn't answer. He claimed he hadn't asked neighbors for help because he didn't know them, and he hadn't knocked on any doors. When the officer pressed him on basic questions like his address or phone number, Henry stumbled. He couldn't recall where he lived or even his own phone number, and to Aisha, this wasn't just odd, it felt calculated, and it was as if he was purposefully avoiding the details, refusing to answer with clarity. As the search for Breasia expanded, the community rallied, and dozens of volunteers joined the search efforts. Flyers with Breasia's face were posted all over town, and the police expanded their search area. But with each passing hour, Aisha's concern intensified. The more she thought about Henry's actions, the more suspicious they became. The truth seemed further out of reach, and the man she once trusted was now the center of her growing suspicion. As the investigation into the disappearance of Breasia Terrell deepened, the police began to scrutinize Henry's statements. Henry had claimed that he had searched for Breasia all night, but surveillance footage told a different story. The footage revealed that Henry's movements were erratic and evasive. Despite saying he had been looking for Breasia, he was seen driving around town in his maroon Chevy Impala at unusual hours, but no sign of Breasia was found. The authorities began to question the veracity of Henry's statements. They also interacted with Andrea, Henry's girlfriend, who had been present when Breasia went missing. Andrea was calm during the questioning. She provided her own account of the events and also let them search the apartment. There were no signs of Breasia at the apartment, no blood, and also no sign of violence or struggle. Investigators also discovered that Henry's timeline didn't add up. The night Breasia was reported missing, Henry claimed he had been sleeping with his girlfriend, Andrea, and the children. Yet, surveillance footage placed his car at various locations across town during the early hours of July 10th. At 3 a.m., Henry was seen at a quick shop where he purchased gas and cigarettes. The footage raised even more questions about his behavior and intentions. Despite the lack of concrete physical evidence, the growing suspicion around Henry's inconsistent statements and his strange behavior only strengthened the case against him. As the evidence against Henry mounted, the police decided to bring him in for questioning. On July 10, 2020, they invited him to the Davenport Police Department for an interview. Henry was cooperative, but continued to offer inconsistent details about his actions that night. During the interview, he admitted that after he and the children went to bed, he had left the apartment to visit a friend. At one point, the police confronted Henry about his inability to recall basic details, like his address and phone number. Surveillance footage showed him moving around Davenport at odd hours, yet he claimed to have been searching for Breasia. When questioned further, he grew defensive and struggled to explain his whereabouts during critical times. However, despite the mounting suspicion and circumstantial evidence, no physical evidence directly linked Henry to Breasia's disappearance. Nevertheless, given Henry's prior criminal record, particularly his status as a registered sex offender and his inconsistent statements, he remained the prime suspect. As a result, Henry was taken into custody while the investigation continued, with authorities working to gather further evidence to build a stronger case against him. In March 2021, nearly 8 months after 10-year-old Breasia Terrell vanished, the investigation took a dramatic turn. On the morning of March 22nd, 3 fishermen made a disturbing discovery while on Credit Island, a rural area located just outside Davenport. As they walked down a steep embankment toward the water, one of them spotted something white amid the brush. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a human skull and immediately called 911. The discovery quickly made its way to Davenport Police Department, and within hours, forensic teams were on the scene. After processing the area, authorities confirmed the remains were indeed those of Breasia Terrell.
My name is Paul Sikorsky, and I'm the police chief here in Davenport. And last Monday, the Davenport Police Department was contacted by the Clinton County Sheriff's Department in regarding to the discovery of human remains near 270th Avenue near DeWitt. An autopsy on the remains was conducted by the Division of Criminal Investigation, and we have received confirmation we've received confirmation that the remains are those of Breasia Terrell. As you know, Briasia's been missing since July 10th from our city. This news is heartbreaking to both Briasia's family and our Davenport community.
Despite the decomposition, forensic experts determined she had been shot multiple times, with the bullets entering her body from different angles, with one piercing through her jaw. The autopsy confirmed the cause of death: multiple gunshot wounds, which were consistent with a homicide. The news sent shockwaves through the Davenport community, as hopes of finding Breasia alive were officially dashed. For her family and the community at large, the confirmation of her death brought an overwhelming sense of grief and horror. The search for Briasia's body was over, but the search for the truth behind her murder was just beginning. And with the discovery of her remains, investigators began to narrow their focus, and all eyes turned toward Henry Dinkins. His behavior had been increasingly suspicious from the outset, but now the evidence was undeniable. With the discovery of Briasia's body, investigators ramped up their efforts to gather evidence that could tie Henry to the crime. They obtained search warrants for his RV and his car, as those are places where they suspected he may have hidden crucial evidence. Henry's RV, located in a nearby RV park, had been a significant point of interest. Though no traces of Briasia's DNA were found in the vehicle, police uncovered items that raised red flags such as cleaning supplies and a machete. One of the most alarming discoveries came from Henry's RV bedroom. Police found a bottle of bleach, a clear indication that Henry had attempted to scrub away any traces of his crime. Forensic experts later confirmed that bleach had been used to clean the RV, and its presence was particularly troubling given that it coincided with the time of Briasia's disappearance. The machete found in the RV, with visible signs of recent cleaning, further fueled suspicions. It seemed clear that Henry had attempted to cover his tracks, erasing any physical evidence that could tie him to the murder. As investigators continued to comb through Henry's apartment, they discovered more suspicious items that only deepened the mystery. In addition to the bleach and machete, they found other cleaning supplies, including rags and clothes that had been recently used. Despite Henry's attempts to erase any trace of his actions, it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to explain away the evidence piling up against him. The trial of Henry Dinkins began in August 2023, drawing attention from the community and the public. The prosecution wasted no time in presenting a compelling case. They opened with a strong statement highlighting the chilling details of 10-year-old Breasia Terrell's disappearance and the growing body of evidence that pointed to Henry as the prime suspect. The case was built on a mix of forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and Henry's erratic behavior in the days following Briasia's disappearance. Despite the prosecution's strong presentation, the defense attempted to downplay the significance of the circumstantial evidence. They argued that the prosecution lacked direct physical evidence connecting Henry to the crime, suggesting that there was insufficient proof to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. They sought to create doubt in the jury's mind, but the overwhelming testimony and facts provided by the prosecution painted a clear picture of Henry's involvement. One of the most crucial pieces of evidence came from the emotional testimony of DL, Henry's son. DL described the moments leading up to his sister's disappearance, recounting how he saw his father leave with Breasia in the early hours of the morning, while Henry thought he was asleep. His testimony was heart-wrenching, and it connected the dots between Henry's suspicious behavior and the disappearance of his sister. DL's recollection of events was especially important, as he had witnessed the actions of his father firsthand. His testimony was not only vital to the case, but also offered a glimpse into the traumatic experience that DL had to endure. Andrea Culberson, Henry's girlfriend, was also called to testify. Her testimony provided key insights into what happened that night in her apartment. Andrea described how she had gone to bed, only to wake up later in the night to use the bathroom. It was then that she realized both Henry and Breasia were no longer in the apartment. Concerned, she tried calling Henry, but her calls went unanswered. She was unsettled, so she stayed awake, unsure of what was happening. As he disappeared into the other room, Andrea looked out of the window and saw Breasia standing by the car outside in the parking lot. At first, she thought nothing of it, assuming it was just a child hanging out with her father. He then went back downstairs to the parking lot and drove off. However, when Henry came back inside later in the morning, Andrea noticed something was off. He was wearing different clothes and acted strangely, giving no clear answers when she asked where he had been. This testimony was critical as it painted a picture of Henry's unusual behavior and further implicated him in the crime. But it wasn't just Andrea's testimony that fueled the prosecution's case. A key witness, Jared Brink, the man who helped Henry when his car got stuck in the mud, also testified. Jared described how he had pulled Henry's Chevy Impala out of a ditch in the early morning hours of July 10th, 2020, around 4:30 a.m. at around Credit Island, where Briasia's body was found. He recounted the brief interaction he had with Henry, noting that Henry had offered him $100 for his help. Jared also recalled that Henry had been alone in the car, with no child present. Jared's testimony also shed light on the strange circumstances surrounding Henry's behavior. After helping to free the Impala, Jared noticed that Henry seemed unusually calm, and he didn't mention anything about having a missing child. As the trial progressed, the prosecution presented more evidence. They showed surveillance footage that captured Henry's movements on the night of Briasia's disappearance, including driving around Davenport and his purchase of bleach at Walmart. Investigators also presented the bleach found in Henry's RV, linking him to the cleaning of any potential evidence after the crime. Despite the lack of direct physical evidence linking Henry to Briasia's murder, the circumstantial evidence continued to mount. After several days of testimony, the trial reached its final stages. The jury deliberated on the evidence, and the judge delivered the verdict. Henry Dinkins was found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Henry's actions had devastated an entire community, but now he would be held accountable for what he had done. Henry was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never be free again. Despite his conviction, Henry Dinkins continued to maintain his innocence, and during his trial, he voiced his dissatisfaction with the legal proceedings, claiming that the entire case had been tainted by racial profiling. He argued that the evidence against him had been mishandled and that he was unfairly judged based on his past criminal record. Henry's remarks, made during his sentencing, revealed his belief that the system had already decided his fate before the trial even began. He insisted that the case had been unfair, blaming his conviction on a biased system rather than the undeniable circumstantial evidence against him. The sentencing brought a sense of closure to Aisha, Briasia's mother, who had fought relentlessly for justice. It was a bittersweet moment while justice had been served. It could never bring back her daughter. As the trial concluded, Aisha delivered her victim impact statement. She spoke with raw emotion, expressing the deep pain of losing her daughter in such a brutal way. Her words were filled with anger and a recognition that her life would never be the same.
Did she see those gunshots coming? Did you shoot her while she was trying to get away? Did she scream for help? Did she beg you to stop? Did you see in her face when she realized she was shot the first time? What was her last words? Did you stay and watch my baby die? How long did she suffer? Did you watch the life leave from her beautiful hazel eyes? What did you do to my son? Why? Do you know the answers to any of these questions I asked, huh? Henry Dinkins, closure doesn't exist here in this case. Justice doesn't exist here in this case. You didn't just take away my baby's life. You didn't just take away my baby's life. You took away everything from me. My family's sense of security.
The courtroom was silent as Aisha spoke, her voice trembling with grief, but also with strength as she demanded that Briasia's memory be honored. For Aisha, the trial was not just about seeking justice for Breasia, it was about making sure that her daughter's life and death would not be forgotten. It was about ensuring that the truth was known, and that the man responsible for her daughter's death would never escape the consequences of his actions. And with the verdict, justice had been served, but the pain of losing Breasia would never fade. The loss of 10-year-old Breasia Terrell left an indelible mark on the city of Davenport, Iowa. As news of her tragic death spread, the community came together in grief, united by the horror of what had happened to one of their own. Memorials sprang up, with flowers, candles, and photos of Breasia lining streets and gathering spaces. Neighbors, friends, and strangers alike mourned the loss of a bright young girl who had been taken too soon, her potential snuffed out in the most unimaginable way. Despite the overwhelming sadness, the community began to heal, finding solace in the memories of Briasia's kindness, her love for basketball, and the light she brought into the lives of those around her. Local organizations, schools, and community groups held vigils and events in her honor, determined to keep her spirit alive. Briasia's siblings, too, were left to grapple with the void left behind. DL, Briasia's younger brother, had witnessed the unraveling of their family and felt the sharp sting of loss more deeply than any child should. He had been the one who had asked for Bresia to join their father on that fateful day, never imagining the tragedy that would follow. But even as the wounds of loss remained, Briasia's memory lived on in the hearts of those who knew her, and in the community that had been forever altered by her disappearance and murder. Our deepest and heartfelt condolence to the family. And now that you've heard the full story, we'd like to hear your thoughts on this case, so feel free to share them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.